right, so in an effort to make the intros shorter and your lives more efficient and not having to deal with me talking for a bunch in the intro, my name is Justin, also known as Shit Just Works. Don't forget to subscribe. Don't forget to hit the like button. We got all types of videos. Going to get into a lot more decks with this new patch coming out. A lot of, hopefully, original decks. This first one, definitely original. Not my own build. Give credit to Sero for this one. If you guys haven't seen Sero, he's awesome. He's a great player, awesome deck builder, and this deck is just on point. Absolutely love it. I'm also going to link below in the description to his video that he put up a little while ago on this deck. Going into this next patch, this deck is on point. I still love it. Man, it's good. Let's just go ahead and get into the actual deck itself. Alright, so we're going to give some respect to Sero here and call it back alley poker, as that is what he went ahead and dubbed this deck as well. Definitely going to give credit to him because this deck is awesome. Absolutely love it. Mainly, I mean, I'm not going to lie, mainly because there's Go Hard in the deck and it's basically like the win condition of the deck. So pretty sick as far as that's concerned. But just in general, this deck, if you're looking for something new, fun, just off meta, this deck is on point. It's so nice. It's so fun. And honestly, you will surprise your opponent with what this deck can actually do. It seems weird at first because even when you're playing it, you're like, wait, how do I win the game? What am I doing? Like, how do I do this? But I promise you, between TF and Go Hard as your win conditions, this deck is pretty consistent. The other random thing that can happen, I've actually been playing this deck a lot lately. You can, with the 3 Elise version, you can actually kind of aggro down your opponent. Because of Jagged Butcher, Dreadway Deckhand, paired with something like Vile Feast or Go Hard with removal, Elise, Fortune Croaker, you tend to get kind of a wide board of like 2 health, 2 attack units, which if your opponent isn't really prepared, you will actually be able to win the game early. All depends, right? So this deck, I think, does have a little bit of a problem with scouts because it has the removal's kind of late game. You have to kind of rely on scouts not really curving out that well. Which honestly, let's be honest, scouts usually curve out well. But anyways, all right, what's the point of this deck? Well, the deck is built around Go Hard. Like I said, 2 win cons, Go Hard and Twisted Fate. Basically, if you think, a lot of people when Go Hard came out, they thought Spooky Karma. And actually, this first game is kind of a variation of Spooky Karma that I go up against. And we're able to win it in the late game because of Go Hard. I mean, we actually win the game with Go Hard. Now, granted, I think we would have won anyways, but we won because of Go Hard. Now, this deck has a ton of draw. So when you're playing something like Go Hard, you basically give yourself an infinite deck. No matter what, you will have Go Hards left in your deck. Now, granted, there are salvage. There's a very rare case where you just ditch all your Go Hards. But generally speaking, if you wait to play salvage, you can play around that, right? If you play one salvage and you see 2 Go Hards get tossed, you wait until you draw another and start shuffling, them back in until you get salvaged. That very rarely happens, okay? So basically, you get into the late game like that. Now, all of a sudden, you just have a bunch of Go Hards in your deck, and a handful of Go Hards and draw equals lots and lots of damage. You basically need to play, I know it seems like a lot more, 4, 8, 12. You'd have to play 16 Go Hards, technically, to 20-0 your opponent. That's not the goal. The goal is to deal chip damage in the beginning, and then eventually finish them off with Go Hard, or clear their board, and clear the way for, things like Jagged Butcher and Elise and all them to get through, right? So, lots of good synergies here too. Fortune Croaker with Pool Shark. Obviously, you don't really want to play Pool Shark on turn 1, but it does give a nice 2 health unit that you really don't care about for later on in the game as well. Dreadway Deckhand, so nice. Can't tell you how many times getting a keg down for a Go Hard or Vile Feast for that matter is just absolutely amazing. Elise, I get it. Elise, TF, why? They don't really go together, I know, but Elise is really just to pressure the opponent early on to give that little bit of tempo that this deck really enjoys in the early game. I've started seeing people are already starting to change this a little bit. So I think somebody had 2 Elise and 1 Gangplank. Gangplank, honestly, not a bad, I actually considered putting that in here. I think the video that I linked below to Sero's version has a Ruination in it. I'm not crazy about Ruination, but if you are kind of all in on the Go Hard strategy, Ruination does make sense. If you're just going 100% to the late game, you need that 1 field clear to possibly get that advantage over your opponent. Because that's the other thing too, right? This deck, if you get enough trades off with your opponent, this deck will eventually just out-trade your opponent. You'll trade. You guys are down to a couple cards. You have more draw to actually get back in the game than your opponent does. So as far as that's concerned, pretty easy to get Twisted Fate leveled up. Speaking of that, with the draw. Twisted Fate, you're not always going to level up Twisted Fate, but God, can this deck do it fast. The idea is that this deck can literally in like 2 turns level up Twisted Fate. You play him, you blue card, you pull Shark. That puts you on 3 going into the next turn, and then if you have 2 salvage, you're golden, right? So generally speaking, you can level them up pretty fast. That's not even including Glimpse Beyond. Then you have Fortune Croaker, and then you have Pool Shark. So there's lots of leveling up, all right? But yeah, and Crumble, very happy with how Crumble works in this deck. And the card in general. I think this card might start to pop up a little bit more. When I first saw this card released, I didn't think it was that great. I didn't think the cost reduction on top of slow and killing your own unit, I didn't think that 2 cost underneath Vengeance really equaled killing your own unit and it being slow. I would like it to still be fast, but then it might actually be broken. I don't know. But I don't know. It seems actually really good. So maybe it's actually super balanced, and I just was wrong about that card. But without further ado, let's go ahead, get into... We got 2 games coming up. One against... It's kind of a Spooky Karma thing going on, but it's got a Maokai in it. And then the next one is a typical... I say typical because this deck just started popping up more. But Targon Noxus, excuse me, which is actually a pretty good aggro deck right now. So let's go ahead and get into both games. All right. We got the Spooky Karma matchup. So, I will say... I'm actually not sure if I keep... Go hard here, but when you are going into most games, usually you don't want to keep go hard. I think I don't know if that's always the correct decision, so I did toss it back here. You do want it for later in the game, because the problem with go hard, if you have it early, you'll probably be able to kill something with it, especially if you draw something like a Dreadway Deckhand, but you could easily lose the card advantage that I was just talking about earlier, that it's so easy to gain above your opponent. Because Go Hard is essentially just a -1. Generally speaking, you won't kill something for straight up value. You'll be killing something like this spiderling that we see here on the field. So, kind of unfortunate that we had that. But we mulligan it away. We do have plenty of draws. It was kind of awkward there going into turn 3 because we didn't want to Fortune Croaker our own deckhand. We end up getting the Vile Feast out because of it, and then we can Glimpse. So this, at the end of the day, ends up working out. Glimpse. So Glimpse 100%, like the draw in this deck is actually super important. On the surface you want to say, all right, well, we got 3 salvage, we got 3 Glimpse, we got 3 Fortune Croakers, we got 3 Pool Shark. Like that's a crap ton of draw. So like, what does it matter if our Glimpse Beyond gets denied? Well, it does, because we want to save that kind of stuff for Twisted Fate if possible. We want to be able to get as much draw as possible to start getting that go hard engine going. And if we're just throwing that draw away and not getting the additional card advantage, it's going to be hard to really keep up the tempo over our opponent or keep the field presence over our opponent as well, right? Because at the end of the day, our units are tiny. Like Doom Beast is about the highest, attack unit generally going to have on the field. Actually, I think it is. I'm thinking about the deck list in my head. I think it is. Unless you get at least leveled, generally speaking, you're never going to get at least leveled, but still, Vengeance on Twisted Fate feels really good, especially when we can respond with a Glimpse, by the way. But anyways, your units are small. So generally speaking, they're not just going to be taking favorable combat trades all the time. They're going to be putting a little bit of damage onto your opponent's units, where you can usually then trade up because you have Vile Feast, you have Go Hard, you have these things that deal damage to your opponent, or you have other chip units that will be able to then go in and attack and trade. So you do need that field, that wide field of all these chump units that you see. And Doom Beast is, right now, generally, there's still a lot of rates all over the place, right? Miss rates. I put up that other video, which card will be up there, that side. Card will be in the corner of the Go Get It miss rates, which I actually love. I think it's a super fun archetype. Similar to this, very, very fun to play. But rates in general, whether it's Go Get It miss rates or just straight up aggro, Callista, mono, Shadow Owls, whatever, they are very prevalent, and Fearsome is very much a thing again. So with Fearsome being a thing, you 100% need some sort of Fearsome blocker. Jagged Butcher does that, which you see on the field right here. And then also the Doom Beast. And Doom Beast also is very nice against aggro because of the just straight up, lifesteal, right? Which I gotta say, and we'll see this in a second against the aggro deck that the Targon Nox as aggro. This deck actually does really well against aggro. I'd say this matchup here is one of the harder matchups, but generally speaking, you can win. Like I said before, Scouts seem like a bad matchup. I haven't really. It's weird, right? They released all the info on the win rates and stuff of the different decks. Riot did, and Scouts was actually like not. It had a high win rate. I think it was over 55%, but really low play rate, or low in comparison to other things. Right? It was still like a 3 or 4% play rate, I think, but still really low. So generally speaking, right now you shouldn't have to worry too much about Scouts. So that's something to take into consideration, and that's obviously. Any deck that you build, you want to take those things into consideration, right? You want to think of, all right, what's going on in the meta now? What do I have to do to play around that? So, oh man, this is what I hate about any sort of like Spooky Karma or Rekindler or Nivea or any of that crap. It feels so bad to have to kill something like Karma because the first thing you think is it's just going to come back. like, do I even invest the resources in killing it? But in this case, we have to, right? Karma cannot hit the field leveled up. If our opponent starts generating double spell value, that's where we might not be able to keep up in that draw value, right? We were talking before about this deck being super important to actually maintain that card advantage over your opponent. So we can't let that Karma stick. So what I think we do here is... I imagine we crumble at some point. We could even go for the 2 Vile Feast and the Go Hard, right? But we have to continue to make sure that this Karma does not stick to the board. I'm actually kind of curious as to why we didn't crumble here. I guess the concern with crumble is I don't really at this point want to crumble the Jagged Butcher to kill the Karma. And if I crumble any of the other units, my opponent could have some sort of like Unspeakable Horror or Vile Feast or something in their hand to basically negate the crumble. So that's exactly why I go the route of 2 Vile Feast and go hard there. So now this is the point where I think this is the point in the game where I start turning on the jets, so to speak, right? Like you see me starting to kind of go after their board a little bit more, even when it's going into my opponent's attack turn, because I want to start setting myself up for a good open attack. If they Ruination here, I'm golden. Like I can just redevelop. I only have Petty Officer, which kind of feels bad, but still, I have Salvage, so I could probably draw into something. They end up having another... I hate that card. I hate Withering Wail. As an aggro player, I despise Withering Wail, okay? But either way, I can redevelop, right? Another Withering Wail would feel really bad here, not gonna lie. Again, still do have the Salvage. Now, here's what I decided to do, and I want to talk about this for a second. So, generally speaking, summoning a keg into your opponent's attack, if you don't have some sort of fast speed spell to counter it, is really bad. I actually Vengeance the Dead Bloom Wanderer there. And that's why I mentioned, like, what was it, turn 9, I think, I started to kind of flip the script and go 100%, like, aggressive Unearned Passage here. You want to know how many times I've seen this play made? A lot, because the card sucks. Don't play it. Anyways, turn 9. I flipped it to aggressive, right? I knew I was going to go aggressive, so now I'm just trying to get as many units off of my opponent's field as possible so I can start going face, right? So I can go ahead and salvage here, see what I get. Don't get anything, so I go ahead and take the open attack. This is 6 damage if it gets through. Looks like, yeah, they have a stun, right? But either way, I'm starting to put the pressure on. I have more cards than my opponent right now as well. But 3 of them are... go get it, or pack your bags technically now is what they are when the card like changes, right? Right now we need to get value off of this with how close the card advantage is, right? So right now we're gonna continue to develop this TF to draw a card, right? We're not gonna do any damage to their field because we don't need to, right? This actually gets the Vengeance out. So now I know they're probably not gonna develop much. We're cool with playing the pack your bags, and this also clears the field to potentially open, or not open attack, but attack free and clear with Jagged Butcher, with Pool Shark. That's going to be another 4 damage. It actually puts them at the exact 5 that I would need for another, pack your bags, right? So, just things to take into consideration. You need to get as much value as possible. And see, there's the Go Hard in the Spooky Karma. This is where everybody originally thought Go Hard would be a thing, is in the Spooky Karma deck, right? But I don't think it has nearly as much draw as this Back Alley Poker, right? So, but anyways... We have the advantage now. We got the Glimpse Beyond. We have way more cards than our opponent. We even have the Pack Your Bags being set up. There's the fourth one. Technically, you need 4, right? Because you need to play 3, and then the fourth one is actually Pack Your Bags. And yeah, that's game. So we could have won with the Pack Your Bags, but you know, we just attacked. And you can see there too, because we had so much cards over our opponent, drawing that Elise was actually really good late game. Because when you have, like, let's say you have like 5 cards, your opponent has 2. An Elise is actually very impactful because it generates even more tokens and cards that your opponent, the Spiderlings, has to deal with. Which that late in the game is going to be hard when they don't have a whole lot of cards in their hand. And investing 1 card just to deal with an Elise or a Spiderling is bad when your opponent has 5 other cards. So just, again, Elise, I like her personally in this deck. She might end up eventually just getting replaced 100%. Like, if it were to shift to need more late game tools, I imagine all the Elise will come out, maybe for Gangplank, and then it just really becomes like kind of a keg control, I guess. I don't know. But anyways, all right. We end up playing the Jagged Butcher here. Gonna play a little bit of catch up. As a 2/2, just you know, we're playing against aggro. We need to preserve our health. So as far as that's concerned, it kind of feels bad, but you gotta do what you gotta do. Same deal with this Twisted Fate. We need to get any fearsome units off the board because this deck is not crazy good with fearsome units. There's one petty officer in here, which I you know, there's some that are playing 2 or whatever. I actually like it strictly because it is a fearsome blocker at this point. Like, it actually provides a lot of value just for being a fearsome blocker. So it's good that we do have the petty officer, but that's exactly why we played the red card. We need to get that precious pet off the field. It also allows us to trade this Spiderling into one of these Solari soldiers if we need to. This was kind of a pain in the butt. Because obviously my opponent knows that I'm just going to trade into the Solari soldier, right? So not seeing Fervoring one kind of makes sense. This is where Crumble like won me the game here. Crumble literally won me the game. This ends the game. My opponent could have a Blade's Edge is really like the only thing I'm worried about there to negate this, which I was scared as shit when they played the Pale Cascade. But no Blade's Edge. But this just wins me the game because that was an additional, what? That would have been 3 damage. Or if I blocked with the Elise, it would have only been 2. But that puts me at 9. The difference between 11 and 9 going against the aggro deck is actually pretty freaking huge. So very, very big there that I had that crumble. And from here, like, look at our hand. Would you just look at it? This is actually going to be a game. So the first one was an example of winning with Go Hard, Pack Your Bags, all that fun stuff. I'm actually not sure if I think I get Pack Your Bags off this game as well. But either way, the Twisted Fate is, I believe, going to level in this game, and this is where you can kind of see the Twisted Fate win condition. And this is why, man, I think this is why this turned out to be the better Go Hard deck than Spooky Karma. I mean, everybody gravitated towards Spooky Karma. Makes sense. Late game, you'll draw your whole deck eventually, and then you draw Go Hards, right? The problem is you don't draw Go Hards quick enough in that, right? I mean, you need to actually use the Go Hards and use the Pack Your Bags for it to really help you. And if it's not being played, then it's not going to help you, right? In this deck, you're just drawing. That's literally what you do. You draw. You draw, you draw, you draw. And now we get to a point where, look, we already have 2 more Go Hard, 3 more Go Hards in hand. Whew, can't keep up. And that means we will have another Pack Your Bags. So I think, if I remember correctly, in this game, they actually end up killing my TF. So I only get 1 more round of full cards off. But at this point, it's fine. Because of the Pack Your Bags that I will eventually get, we are A-okay. So this is setting up to just kill the Draven because of TF's cards. And I think my opponent actually plays Captain Farron. Captain Farron is really scary. And again, this is why, so if you do the math going into a couple turns later, this is why it mattered that we killed that Crescent Guardian. Because they have 3 Decimates in hand. And, okay, the Noxy Fur is actually how they killed the TF. So they had 3 Decimates in hand. I need to stay above 12, like, no matter what. I would have been at... Actually, I think I still would have been at 14 after I played this Doom Beast a little bit later. But either way, we're able to get TF off a few times, which essentially save us from getting killed from the Farron. But on top of that, because the Farron, in addition to the Draven dying, the Farron gets stunned, we can just attack. And this was my other point, right? You can actually go wide. You actually have enough followers and units on the field most of the time to just go in for an attack. And against aggro, they don't usually have much removal. So they're not going to stop this, right? We just play the Doom Beast, and that's it. So aggro, Spooky Karma, all these decks. This deck is great. Just hope you don't play against scouts. But I honestly, this deck is on point. So fun to play. Definitely recommend playing this deck. Alright, and there you have it. Back alley poker. So, again, shout out to Sero for the amazing deck idea. Absolutely love this deck. Super fun to play. And it's different. Always up for some different deck ideas. You know when I cast, if you guys watch the casts, I'm always trying to find. And with spectator mode now out, we can find all the spicy matchups, all the spicy decks that are played, and focus on those moving forward instead of doing all that stupid cookie cutter stuff. But yeah, so fun stuff. Definitely try the deck out. And again, link to Sero's video will be in the description below. And as always, everybody, stay healthy, stay positive. I hope shit just works for you, and peace out.